Interpretation of measures of position. Quantiles. The measures of positions that divide a distribution into 4, 10, and 100 equal parts. First is the quartiles. These are the score points which divide a distribution into 4 equal parts. There are 3 quartiles denoted by Q sub 1, Q sub 2, and Q sub 3, which are the first, second, and third quartiles respectively. 25% of the distribution fall below the first quartile, 50% fall below the second quartile, and the 75% fall below the third quartile. Given the illustration, 25% of the data is less than or equal to the Q sub 1, or meaning the remaining 75% of the data is greater than the Q sub 1. Deciles. The deciles are the 9 score points which divide a distribution into 10 equal parts. These are the 9 deciles which are denoted by D sub 1, D sub 2, D sub 3 until D sub 9. In such organization of data, 10% falls below D sub 1, 20% falls below D sub 2, and so on, and 90% falls below the D sub 9. Given this illustration, we can see that 10% of the data is equal or less than or equal to the D sub 1, and the remaining 90% of the data is greater than the D sub 1. Percentiles. These are the 99 score points which divide a distribution into 100 equal parts. These are 99 percentiles which are denoted by P sub 1, P sub 2, P sub 3, and so on until we have P sub 99. In such organization of data, 1% falls below the P sub 1, 2% falls below the P sub 2, and so on, and 99% falls below the P sub 99. So given this illustration, 25% of the data is less than or equal to the 25th percentile or P sub 25, and the remaining 75% of the data is greater than the P sub 25. For the quantiles, let's consider the line segment that represents the distribution of data. So from this given, we can say that our lower quartile or the Q sub 1 is equal to the P sub 25 or the 25th percentile. We can also say that our middle quartile or the Q sub 2 is the same as the P sub 50 and the D sub 5. And we can say that our Q sub 3 is also equal to the P sub 75. The measures of position indicate the relative standing of a data value when data are sorted into numerical order from the smallest to the largest one. The corresponding percent of data values are less than or equal to any measure of location, which means low percentiles, quartiles, and deciles always correspond to lower data values, and high percentiles, quartiles, and deciles always correspond to higher data values. Any measure of position may or may not correspond to a value judgment about whether it is good or bad. The interpretation of whether a certain position is good or bad depends on the context of the situation to which the data applies. So let's have examples. In a 20-question mathematics test, the 70th percentile for the number of correct answers was 16. What does it mean? So since we have 70th percentile, which is the P sub 70, which means 70% of the data, so 70% of the students answered 16 or fewer questions correctly. And since the remaining out of the 70% will be 30%, so we have 30% of the students answered 16 or more questions correctly. Another one. In preparation for palarong pambansa, Mr. Borja, Escalabarzon athletics team coach, asked his 10 players to run 100 meters. Anthony, one of the players, ran completely in 9 minutes, which is the fourth decile of the recorded time. What does it mean? Since we have fourth decile, our d sub 4 is the same as the p sub 40, which is also 40% of the data. We can say that 40% of the players run less than or equal to 9 minutes, because it was mentioned that Anthony, one of the players, ran completely in 9 minutes, which is the fourth decile. Now, knowing that there are 10 players, 40% of those 10 players is 4. So we have 4 players run less than or equal to 9 minutes, including Anthony. And the remaining 60% of 10 players, which is 6, so the 6 players ran greater than 9 minutes. Based on the survey conducted by the Barangay Health Office of Barangay San Jose, the third quartile or the Q sub 3 of the ages of 200 grade 10 students of that barangay is 16 years old. What does it mean? So since we have Q sub 3, it means the upper quartile is equal to the P sub 75. So we can have 75% of the data. So 75% of the grade 10 students in Barangay San Jose is 16 years old or younger than 16 years old. And 75% of, we have 200 grade 10 students. 75% of 200 grade 10 students, which is equal to 150. 150 grade 10 students of Barangay San Jose are 16 years old or younger than 16 years old. And the remaining 25% of those 200 grade 10 students, which is equal to 50 grade 10 students, are older than 16 years old. Another example, the score of grades in the third quarterly examination in mathematics is in the 8th decile or the d sub 8. And the passing score is in the 65th percentile or the p sub 65. Did she pass the test? Assume that the values of d sub 8 and p sub 65 are different. So we all know that our d sub 8 is equal to p sub 80 or the 80th percentile. So since it is assumed that our d sub 8 and p sub 65 have different values, then we can say that Grace's score is greater than p sub 65. Thus, she passed the examination. Mrs. Diaz gave a test to her students in statistics. The students finished their test in 35 minutes. This time is the 2.5th decile of the allotted time. What does this mean? So since we have 2.5th decile, it would be equal to 25%. So 25% of the students finished their test in just 35 minutes. So in this case, we can say that a low quartile considered good because it means the students finished the test in a short period of time.